going on with that. Now, Virginia basketball. I don't know if you watched any of it. If you did, you might as well have just taken either Valium or just sleeping pills. Missed 24 shots in the first half, including their last 14. Indiana State had 6 full games this season when it missed 24 or fewer shots. Now, again, it's time to move on. The tournament has started, but my God, there's a lot of argument about Virginia. They are done. And they won the national title. That will always have the national title, and that's what a lot of teams would give up 10 years of drought for a national title. But are they like the Iowa of football and basketball?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a great comparison. And unlike Iowa, at least Tony Bennett has publicly said last night, we may have to change our approach to this. It worked for the team that he had that won the national title. But Emory pointed out that Jay Billis said to you just yesterday he'd rather have offense than defense.
Yep.
And the game has changed a lot in a very short amount of time with what people are doing. And basketball is probably their cycles run a lot faster than football. You know, you can have the option for 25 years. You can have the spread for 25 years. And then like 10 years from now, there's going to be a new thing we can't even think of that's out there. People are like, oh my gosh, this is wild. This offense that happens. Basketball's just run in cycles. Basically, depending on where, are there more guards now? What are the rules like? You know, what are the defenses that we can play and how people cycle through that? So those cycles spin a lot faster. And he won an old school defensive way in 2019. And good for Virginia, but he didn't adapt his style at all. And they just kind of get further and further away from that team, because it's harder and harder to find 5 elite defenders who can score. And then when everybody around you is trying to score more and they're shooting more threes, well, if your whole thing is, we don't really have to score that much, it's going to be a problem. And scoring 14 points and a half was absolutely disgraceful. And I'm sure the committee is, going, maybe we whiffed on that one.
I don't know if they are, but that, you wonder if they even care that well.
I just think this will be solved when they add more teams.
Yeah, that was most of the theme last night, Craig, is that most people are, but we need another 8 to 12 teams added to the tournament.
Yeah, no, I don't think we do. I don't think we've needed that whatsoever. I don't think Virginia's the poster child for why that shouldn't happen either, but it is an easy way to point and go. So you want more teams like this that were fringe that probably shouldn't have made it, but now they're going to just get in because there's 8 more spots that are available. Like Oklahoma obviously would be in. They probably would have put up a better performance in Virginia. But, I mean, we've seen Virginia play like this. I mean, this is nothing brand new unless you've just never watched them before. That was horrific. 14 points at halftime. High school basketball games have higher scores than that. And high school basketball, in my opinion, is not a great product to watch most of the time. So that was not pretty whatsoever, and not a game that I think – the basketball folks out there will point to as one of the better examples of how beautiful the game is. So, just an awful showing when you saw the videos of them so surprised to get the announcement in the first place start to circulate no wonder they were surprised as anybody that they even got the opportunity to get in there. And that turned out to be the highlight of their postseason because they turned around and put up this performance and exited so quickly. But that was horrific. Congrats to Colorado State. I mean, a team that probably doesn't get enough credit here because we're so busy dunking on Virginia, but they certainly proved themselves and proved, if anything, they should have been a no-doubter, whereas Virginia should have had a little bit more questions about them. But that's the kind of showing that sets basketball back.
So, Garrett, do you have that one? Michigan State basketball coach Tom Izzo took a lot of heat because he was making comments about the tournament going forward. And Chris Vanini, who's going to join us at 3:40 on many things, said he was reading the full quote. And a lot of times people will see a quote or part of a quote, or even someone who just takes something and then they put it in their own words about the mid-majors and Cinderella and all of that. He said, reading the full quote, we'll show you in a minute, Izzo's comments today got a bit misconstrued. Here's one of the things he said. I'm a Division II guy. This is Izzo. I'm always looking out for the little guys. I'm not very big myself. I always have an appreciation. Maybe that would be a reason to expand. I just think what's happening now Everybody likes the upsets in the first weekend, but I'm not so sure moving on that's what's best for the game. I think it's got to be looked at seriously. He compared the difference between football with 1/3 the schools compared to basketball with 350 plus, and he's just kind of wondering about it. He took a tremendous amount of heat, and in some cases probably should, about saying that, yeah, the first weekend's fun, but in the end it all calms down. Florida Atlantic, and by the way, San Diego State would like to disagree with you.
Yeah, and I think that that was why I was shocked, like that the morning after Virginia, scored less than a convent last night, that they go, and he goes and says that, like all the other things he said, fine. Well, you throw that in there and it's going to be either misconstrued or taken. Like this is the disconnect that we see between the power brokers and the fans. The fans of this event, who are very loyal to it, have told you, we love this thing just the way it is. We don't need more. We don't want less. This is so perfect. You guys have actually, instead of in your monkeys humping a doorknob way, found a way to do something that's so wonderful. Don't mess with it. And all they're doing is, I want to mess with it. I want to mess with it. I want to mess with it. Listen to the consumer. They're telling you,
don't mess with it.
This is a perfect meal. It's a 5-star steakhouse. Don't mess with it.
One of the other things, Craig, that he's talking about is that the tournament championships and all of that, Purdue loses, so they don't get an automatic bid, but it's not like they're going to be left out. But he was just kind of barking. It's kind of what Pitino wasn't barking. I thought he handled what happened to Louisville on Sunday night very well.
St. John's.
What did I say?
You said Louisville.
St. John's, excuse me. And so there's Izzo on. I like the little guys. But I think sometimes we're so worried about that first week, we forget about the game itself, the rest of the tournament.
So I'll come at it from a different angle because I know that there were it was like 100% Michigan State fans that were saying this got misconstrued and that the quote wasn't, or the tweet wasn't really fully fleshing out the quote. And so does it make sense if you position it that he was saying more of, when you have these smaller conferences that have their tournaments and the team that actually is like the most deserving to be in the tournament gets knocked out in like the championship game, and this other team who probably is not making the tournament is suddenly in the tournament, and now this other team that should have been in all along now is got to get in or is on the bubble. I think that's kind of what he was pointing to as well.
Well, but then would he be okay with those mid-major conferences getting multiple bids?
Probably not. That's why you expand the tournament so everybody gets. Does that make sense?
But I thought they wanted to expand the tournament. The feeling I get, based on Sankey, is expand the tournament, but it's going to be expanding the tournament to add more of the power autonomy conferences.
It's to include Oklahoma and Virginia and whatever, but I'm just saying that's the only other way that they're also going to get their other team in if there is an upset in the championship game. So that's kind of how I read his quote, and how I digested it was putting, I guess, so much on that conference championship, it can, if there's an upset, really shake up and suddenly screw with the spots a little bit. And so a team that might be deserving doesn't get in because this seed upset the top seed that was going to get that automatic berth. And
like Indiana State.
Like Indiana State got screwed. Yeah, exactly. So in an expanded format, Oklahoma gets in, but you know what? Indiana State probably would too, you would think. Even though I know what you're saying is they're gearing it towards the big brands, and I agree. But I don't think that means there's not going to be any mid-majors that would make it in an expanded format. That would be silly. So I think that's how I read it, or more of how I took it in. I understand, though, the backlash to reading the initial quote, and then, some of that could be reinforced depending on the way you read the article. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt as best I can, just to play devil's advocate. And if that's where he's coming from, I can understand it a bit more than the way it originally appeared, which certainly made him look pretty bad. I mean, in the grand scheme.
The conference tournaments, just like the conference championship games, are there not to find out who makes the tournament. It's there because of money, just like in football. Here's a note, and Garrett, I hope you may have blacked out his actual name, but let's have fun with this. Mr. Hotballs, the people who put Virginia in the NCAA tournament should also be put in an electric chair. Like, don't be offended. Don't go crazy. I had to show that because that's kind of the way most people felt last night as that thing just dragged on for a couple of hours or so.
Yeah. And look, we all could use, a a name like Mr. Hotballs as our
Is that your nickname, Paul?
No, it wasn't.
Don't they call you off TV?
No, that's my. Listen, I'm really mad because he ruined my whole idea for an OnlyFans page.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that what you saw last night was the argument against the expansion of the tournament. I think that it's as big as it can be. And because if you do that, not that you're going to get a team scoring 14 points and a half again, but you're going to get more games like that no one cares about. So why are you doing it more? And if you're not doing it to make sure that the Indiana States get in for sure, because like that's one of the things that's a selling point. So like, well, Indiana State wouldn't have had to worry about it this year. And then you go, well, I mean, wouldn't they? It's the same thing with football. Like, hey, the ACC wouldn't have to worry about getting left out of playoff because we're going to give them one spot for sure. Well, once you fill their little spot, is there any promise from the committee that you're really going to stick up for the little ones? You say that because it's all that you can throw the line to the mid-majors and the G5 schools and the like, but really you don't care.
Yeah, you act, and at least it seems like the momentum is about separating from the highest level from the mid or lower levels, and yet, that's all they have. That's the only way they're going to get in, because there will be some mid-majors, and then Jay Billis brought this up too yesterday with us, is that if you did not give all of the conferences who play college basketball at the Division I level an automatic bid, there would be a handful of those conferences who would never have somebody in, and then it becomes the football model.
I think this is what we need to make sure and hammer home that football and basketball are two very different things. But one of the arguments I've already seen crop up, and this is, I think, very concerning for college sports fandom and just kind of the industry in general, for those who don't pop like 3 million ratings every time their TV's on or their teams are on TV, is some of the pushback to adding more of those types of teams, more of the mid-major teams, and the reasoning for bringing in more of like, let's just put Oklahoma in. Do they deserve it in this current format? No. An expanded one, though, they'd be included, and this team would be included, and that team would be included. It's for TV ratings. And you know what? F the TV ratings, man. Like, I bring them up during the season, which I'm probably going to stop doing because I just think it's interesting to look at like who, not in a tribal way, but just like, hey, who watched the games this weekend and what game popped the biggest ratings, and that's just
another way to say this is how much bigger I am.
It's like, man, look at that freaking crowd at Ohio State, Michigan, and then look at the massive number they got. And I look at it just in that way, very simply. But I'm already seeing that chatter kind of rise up in regards to the NCAA tournament of, FAU is great, but who cares? Look at the TV ratings they got by the time the championship rolled around. It's like, dude, you as an average fan give a damn about the TV rating?
What was a recent championship when people brought up the ratings and how low it would be rather than just the game itself? There was something that happened recently on that. Maybe it was a college football playoff. I don't know, but those were two pretty
I don't know,
good
maybe
games.
TCU or something. I don't know, but there's the FAU example, TCU playing Georgia. I mean, there's I guess been other instances as well. But, I mean, I understand the network's worrying about that. And I guess the fans who do worry about that are speaking for the group that doesn't really watch at all until March, and let's do what's best for getting as many eyeballs as we can in March. And I understand that business wise to an extent, but I'll never understand fans wanting to include 75 teams just so there's potentially better TV ratings in a round of 32 game for CBS. Like, who cares?
It might
liquidate
it enough, or maybe water it down to where you might lose actually a little bit of that.
I mean, maybe and maybe not. And I think that's the gamble we're seeing with the SEC and the Big Ten that they're banking on is in football. And again, football is a very different sport, but they're banking on the fact that, like, okay, if Iowa State's not involved, does that really change anything for us? No, not really, because Ole Miss will pop this rating if they got the same spot. And so from a TV rating standpoint, they're sort of locked in where all of those biggest football brands are under two umbrellas. In basketball, it's a much different thing. I mean, you can't say the Big 12's this lowly little conference when it comes to basketball. You can't say that most of the time when it comes to the ACC, but you can dunk on them in football over and over again, granted, the timing and the given year and all that. So, yeah, I mean, if that's part of the conversation, then that's just unfortunate because it's just another sign of, and look, this has always been a money industry, but ruining a good thing or tampering with a good thing just for the sake of getting more eyeballs on a game that not many people are going to remember in the long run for bigger brands. I don't know. I don't like that idea.
I think all this you're talking about all started because of realignment.
Of course.
I think it all started, but you think about it, it doesn't mean that you didn't say something back in 2015, but a lot of it has started because it's kind of like this turf war. And this is what, and instead of, how many times did you hear like comments about the ratings instead of the damn game? That's the part that kind of got to me a little bit.
Why does everybody suddenly want expanded playoff or expanded tournament? Because they've got 18 teams in their leagues now. That's why. If you had 10 or 12, then okay, you get like 6 in. That's great. That's 50% of the league. 6 now is a third of the league.
Yep.
It might be a fourth of the league here in the next 2 or 3 years. So I think that's where, you're having to kind of force more of that to let everybody eat more, but it's because you've all consolidated and now you've got way more mouths to feed under a conference umbrella.
All right.